Hello and welcome to my channel, Voleptis Ocularum. It means pleasure of the eye. My name is Stephanie, and in today's video we have a first look at Renesans Watercolor. This is a brand from Poland, and they have half pans, Grand Godets, as well as tube paints. Now, I had the opportunity to meet the Renesans representatives at the International Watercolor Masters Festival earlier this month, and I have to tell you, I was completely captivated by their display and by the pigments that they were showing. I was especially captivated by these extra large Grand Godets. So obviously I did the rational thing and immediately purchased 200 pounds worth of watercolor supplies. In this video, I'm going to take you through all of my purchases, show you what their different qualities are, and do a giveaway of a very special limited edition pigment. I saw this demoed at the festival and they kindly gifted me a couple of these pans, so I'm going to give one away to one of my lucky viewers. Please stay tuned for how you can enter the draw. I think a lot of people are already familiar with the half pans from this brand because they have been out for quite some time. Likewise, their 15 ml intense watercolor tubes have been reviewed a couple of times here on YouTube already. But what I haven't seen anything about yet are these Grand Godets. These are extra large pans that are exactly the same size as a Kuretake Gansai Tambi paint. And I wanted to test these out because when I saw them being displayed at the festival, I knew that these were the type of paints that I would love. They have so much character. A lot of them have granulation. There's a lot of color separating mixes. And so I really wanted to test these out and share them with you. So one of the things I found a little bit confusing is that each of these lines are formulated slightly differently from each other. So there is not a lot of overlap between the pigments and colors in these three lines. So let's go through each of them one by one. So the half pan colors come in this range. I'm just going to pan over this brochure. And it does say in the brochure that these are made using a recipe from Europe using what does it say? Gum arabic and pigment and acacia honey. So these are honey-based watercolors, and I will be looking forward to comparing them to some other honey-based watercolors that I have, like Gallo and Sennelier. Now, this is the color range for the tubes, and when I was talking to them, they said that there was only about a 10% overlap between the colors in the tubes and the colors in each of the different pan sets. So that's an interesting approach because the thing that maybe could be a downside is that if you run out of one of the pans, you cannot buy a tube to refill it. So they're completely different product lines, and that might be something that you consider as you look at these different options. So this is the brochure for the Grand Godets. These are extra large pans. There is 7.5 mils in each pan. And as you can see on this color chart, a lot of these colors look to be quite granulating and quite interesting. They have some interesting mixes, and they had these all out on display. They also had a hand-painted color chart when I was looking at the materials. And so these have some quite interesting mixes that I'm looking forward to trying. These also are honey-based, so they are natural gum arabic, glycerin, and acacia honey. So just to show you how the pan comes, it has all of the information printed on the back of the pan. And then if you slide out this, the pan comes out. It is on watercolor paper, and this looks like it might be a real swatch on here, which is really lovely. This is what the pan looks like. So it is fairly well filled, and it is quite firm. It doesn't feel sticky. But there is no information on the pan itself. So it's very important that as soon as you open the pan, that you do put the information on the pan itself, because otherwise, it could easily get lost amongst other things and you'll never know where it came from or what it is. So I'm going to open all of mine and record the information on the pans first before I get started with swatching. Okay, so I was just opening up the half pans, and I just wanted to show you these as well. They have a sticker on them. It does have the pigment information. However, there is no information on the pan itself. So what I've been doing is opening them up like this and just peeling back the sticker and writing the information on the side. But I just wanted to point out, because as soon as I started opening the pans, I realized that the paint is like quite sunken down into the pans themselves. So you can see, especially with this one, there's not really, like, it's not really full. None of them are so far. They've all kind of sunken down into the pan. So that's quite different from other pans that I've received where they're filled up right to the top. If they're hand filled, or if they're extruded, you know, they go right to the top. So maybe a quality issue to be aware of, or yeah, something like that. But it's a little disappointing because they are quite sunken down. So after I did all of my swatching yesterday, I realized that my camera was autofocusing on my hand and it was kind of swapping back between the page and my hand. So I decided to redo the swatching today. I'm going to use a bigger brush as well, because I feel like the brush I used yesterday, it wasn't big enough for these large pans, and it didn't really, like, it wasn't that easy to pick up the pigment. And because they're large pans, I thought that it would be good to use some larger brushes. So I have a large soft flat brush, and also one of my favorite brushes, which is a Da Vinci Cosmotop Mix B, and this is in a size 10. So I am going to just give the paints a little spritz as I go, just to help. Because they are so large, it's hard to sort of like transfer the right amount of water over all at one time. But I'm just going to do 5 at a time, and I'll keep them moist as I go. So let's get started. The first color is Cadmium Yellow Pale. This is a PY 35. And shockingly, in my collection, I don't really have that many cadmium colors. I think I just tried to sort of avoid them, but at the same time, I feel like over time you just get really curious about how these types of paints act as opposed to the cadmium-free alternatives. So I do have a few cadmiums in my collection now. I'm not like really super concerned about toxicity in my paints, only because I am not ingesting food while I'm painting. Most of the time, I even forget to ingest the coffee that I've made for myself. So yeah. The next one is Yellow Earth. It is a natural yellow iron oxide, PY 43. I decided in today's swatching, I'm going to let the colors mix and merge a little bit as well, just so that we can see how they flow into each other. I'm going to do some pure swatching on 100% cotton watercolor paper as well after this, so that I have each swatch sort of laid out individually, and I can then put it into my swatch Bible. But I like to see how paints kind of flow together. It's always really interesting. Next is burnt sienna. This is a very traditional pigment for burnt sienna. It is PBR 7. I would say this one is a little redder than a lot of the burnt siennas I have in my collection. It's, yeah, something between a burnt sienna and an English red or a Venetian red. Definitely more on the red side than on the orange side, I would say. Next up is a special color. It is unique to this brand. It is called Misty Rose. This is a mix of PO34 and PB29. Next, we have quinacridone red, which is also labeled as quinacridone rose on the label. So one or either of those names describes this color, and it is a PR 122 pigment. Oh, I was gonna I was gonna tap that yellow, but I think I'm just gonna leave it. It's just a part of the swatching process. This is Renaissance's version of Wisteria, which is a really beautiful light lilac-y pastel pinky color. I do have this in Daniel Smith as well. I feel like I have it in another, well, there's some very similar color in Rosa Gallery in their new release this year, Lilac Pale. This is another interesting mix. It's called Mystical Violet. I think this one reminded me of, I think it's Shadow Gray, or maybe it's Misty Morning in Roman Schmal, where they have a really beautiful sort of gray violet mix with PG50. And I'm not sure what the second pigment is in the Roman Schmal version, but in this one it's PG50 and PV19. Next, we have lavender. This is a beautiful color that I use for shadows and for distance. It is PW6, PV49, and PB29 in this version. Now, next up is the special edition pigment that I showed you at the top of this video. There is no pigment information for this, so your guess is as good as mine. In the pan, it gives off a really deep violet look, and then once you swatch it out, it's kind of more of a indigo color. Very interesting. Just going to give some water to this so we can see what it's like. So next is a very traditional pigment, something that I love and have on all of my palettes pretty much, and that is French Ultramarine. It is just PB29, and I'm curious to see whether this is a granulating version. So we'll put plenty of water here to see what happens. a little more pigment at the top. On first glance, it's a very bright, beautiful ultramarine. Just a question of how much it's going to granulate. Next up is sapphire blue. This is a PB16, so that's also known as phthalo turquoise, I believe. PB16 is one of my favorite pigments for painting seascapes. I recently reviewed the Paul Rubens Ocean palette and it had a PB16 in it, and I was really happy to see that because just look at how gorgeous it is. It's really perfect for seascapes. I'm curious if there's other uses for this pigment outside of seascapes. Have you found this to be a good mixing color in general? I've never really tried to mix it with other colors that much. I should probably do a test and see what else it's good for. Okay, now we have cobalt mint or cobalt teal, and it is a PG50 version, which is my favorite. This is always a little bit more of an opaque pigment, but I love to see how you can pull it back to get translucency and transparency. This always just adds such instant brightness and beauty to seascapes, but also forest scenes or anywhere that you have greenery that might have like a really bright shadow. Sometimes my inclination is to use yellow for all of the bright highlights on trees, but sometimes if you add a little cobalt teal, it actually looks really interesting. It's also a granulating color. I can see the granulation starting to happen in the French ultramarine, and that makes me really, really happy. The special edition is also separating into some really interesting colors. So far I'm finding these all really, really pretty to look at. All right, next we have the cobalt green pale, and this is also a PG50. I know that a lot of people don't really like this color of green, and they find it to be a little opaque and maybe, I don't like using the word unnatural because to my mind, if you can invent a color and it comes from nature, which this does, then it is natural. Personally, I find this color to be really useful. It's really useful for mixing with other colors and also just getting a sort of really good basic green. And it's also granulating in sigil pigment, which is always a good thing for greens. I mean, I love all greens pretty much. I'm a big fan of convenience green mixes. So I'm not like, I don't really discriminate against green. I love it in pretty much all of its forms. Just adding a little more water there. I'm going to pause and go change my water because it is getting quite dirty, but I'll be back in a second. Okay, we're back. And I'm going to spritz my last 5 of the Grand Godets. This one I'm really excited to show you. It's called Verdaccio, and it is a dark green mixture. I don't think I've seen this combination in other brands, so this one looks very interesting. It is PBK7, PY150, and PB29. So this is a really, really intense dark green. And I'm going to just pull back some of this pigment in a second. So you can see adding some water to it. But so you can see how dark that pigment really is. It's a very earthy, I would say a brown leaning green. Now the only other color I have with this name, Verdaccio, is in A Gallo, and I really don't like their version. It doesn't re-wet very easily, and the color that comes out is a lot more brown, kind of more similar to an umber than to a green. This one is already like looking very stunning. I love it. So the next one we have is another dark green pigment mix, and it is called Nocturne Green. Now this one has some non-light fast pigments in it, just as a warning. So as soon as I read this, I was a little wary about it, but I do a lot of work in sketchbooks, so I'm just going to try to make sure that I don't ever use this one for a finished piece. But it does have NBK6, which is, I think, a natural black, and then PG8, which is known to be not light fast. That's the original sap green color. So it is a gorgeous green color. A lot of Eastern paint brands do use PG8. So Rosa Gallery uses it. I haven't seen it in Roman Schmal, but I've seen it in like videos that I've seen about white nights. So yeah, it is a not light fast green pigment, but it is a beautiful pigment. So I couldn't resist getting it. Now I'm wondering if there's much of a difference between these two. We'll have to paint those out separately later and check it out. But let's move on to the next one, which is a unique gray called Tokyo Gray. And this one, I was actually looking, they have a few really interesting gray mixes listed on their in their brochure. But this was the only one that they had at the exhibition that I was able to buy. They have some others called Masurian Gray and Moon Gray, and they all look really beautiful. I love an interesting pre-mixed gray as much as I love an interesting pre-mixed green, to be honest with you. So pretty. I guess you could say it's not like a color that you might be necessarily drawn towards on its own, but in terms of using it for certain landscape features, I think it could be really useful and interesting. So I'm just going to pull back the color a little bit up here. Now the pigments here are PY119, PBR24, and PB29. Oops, and I've just poured it all over my page. Oh, luckily it lifts really easily. Good to know. Okay, the next is Caput Mortem, and I saw people testing this pan at the exhibition because they had all of these large Godets all laid out for you to test. And this one just had the most beautiful granulation. I could not resist it, even though I don't typically use a lot of Caput Mortem in my work. I have found it to be really, really strong. And yeah, I don't know if I've found like a really good use for it in my work yet. I'm curious because I know some people are really passionate about this color. If you love Caput Mortem, what do you use it for? What's your like go-to subject for this? Or how do you use it within your paintings? I'm guessing maybe skin tones, maybe animal paintings. I'm not sure. So you can see that the Tokyo Gray is color separating right now, which is very interesting. It looks, if you have Rosa Gallery's cobalt brown, I think they have cobalt brown and they might have a cobalt gray, I'm not too sure, but cobalt brown has like a similar granulating characteristic to this. I think that's the PBR24. Okay, the final one for the Grand Godets is this Cypress Earth, which is basically burnt umber, and it is PBR7. Now this is the only one that was shrunk in the pan. Everything else kind of fills up right to the edges, but this one has definitely lost some volume as it's dried. So that's just something to be aware of. So I know these swatches look a little bit chaotic, but I love to see the character of a paint as it's painted out, as opposed to just like the perfect swatches. And I think that it's really clear that these are very characterful paints in these pans. They're not like your typical pigments. So we're going to continue to see how they dry, but I'm already loving the way that I see these paints traveling and mixing, how they go into each other and how they're separating. A lot of granulation. So if you're a fan of granulation, these paints might be something to think about. I'm going to move on to the pans now, the half pans. So that is these ones. And I'm going to pre-wet these as well, just with a little spray. And we're going to paint those out next and see how they compare. All right, so I'm starting with the titanium white. And just so you see this, they do re-wet very readily. I mean, I sprayed them, but they're very easy to pick up with the brush. I mentioned before while I was opening these that some of the pans are sunk quite far down. So I would say like that might be a downside for sure. For me, I would be, I bought these paints, so I am a little disappointed that to see that they're sunken down in the half pans. But on the other hand, if you're working from the Grand Godets, those are obviously huge and filled right to the top. So I don't know if this is just a batch issue or a quality control issue for this specific type, but just something maybe Renaissance, if they're watching, can just be aware of that. Now, that being said, these pans are really good value. I think they are about, I think I saw on Art Miranda that they're going for around 2 to 3 pounds per half pan, which is a pretty good deal. So on these ones, I'm using my round brush and I'm just going into the top with a deeper amount of color. You can see over the black line what the opacity is. And then I'm just sort of dragging it down into the base so you can see a bit of a gradient here. I guess I should probably connect these ones as well so that we can look at their flow. Okay, I'm going to start doing that now. Next up is lemon yellow. I don't think I said the pigments for the previous two, but you can read them on the page here. So let's do a connection here. So lemon yellow, which is a straight up PY3, which I believe is a Hansa yellow light. And next we have a cadmium red pale. Like I said at the beginning, I don't really have that many cadmiums in my collection, so this is a new one for me. I'm not sure that I have any other PR 108s. I might have them if they came in like a set. Sometimes like those pre-made sets have cadmiums, but it's not a color that I've used a lot, mostly because I've found that it has a strong drying shift and reds don't tend to retain their sort of brightness and brilliancy after they've dried. Now this one is very intense, so I'm kind of curious to see if it dries a lot lighter, and we can keep our eye on that as these swatches continue to dry. The next one is mineral violet, which is basically a dioxazine violet. It is PV23. Now on its own, I would say this color is not my fave, but I have found it to be quite useful for developing really deep shadows. It is a really good way to strengthen and deepen shadows. If you're kind of bored of doing Payne's gray or mixing ultramarine and a red or a orange or burnt sienna color, then try doing it with mineral violet or dioxazine violet. It can give you some really beautiful deep shadows. All right, next, a phthalo blue. This is green shade, PB15:3. You can see it's really wanting to travel down this page, so I'm not surprised at all about that because phthalo blues do tend to be travelers, let's say, and love to move around. This is a really quite lovely shade of phthalo. I think the green shade is probably the most useful, but I do have red shade in the Roman Schmal brand. Next is Prussian blue. This is PB27. I do love to see the way that paint moves around on the page. Every pigment seems to have its own character and quality as you paint it out. Some of them love moving, some of them like to stay in the same place. I just love seeing them travel. The next one is a green convenience mix called Cinnabar Green Pale that is PG7, PY3, and PY83. And despite the fact that it is looks quite bright in the pan, I would say it's actually a very lovely sort of earthy, maybe like a light olive color is how I would refer to it. So far, what I'm noticing about these paint pans as opposed to the Grand Godets is they do seem a lot smoother, although we haven't really gotten to the earth tones yet, so we'll see how that plays out. Next up, we have olive green, which is a 4-pigment mix, PG8, PY42, PBK7, and PY83. This probably wouldn't be my ideal mix for a multi-pigment mix green, only because PG8, as I said before, isn't quite that light fast. But I don't mind it as a color. It kind of reminds me of shadow green pale in Holbein. I'm just going to do a lot of moisture here and see how it flows. Maybe we'll get some interesting things happening. Now you can quibble over whether this is the color of an olive, but I perceive olives to be in all shapes and sizes, just like people. So I never get too upset if something says olive green and it doesn't look like the olive I see in my head, because there are hundreds of varieties of olives and they all have their own individual tone. Okay, next I am going with raw sienna. Now, even just looking at this in the pan, it looks very opaque and orange to me. Very interesting to see this as a raw sienna, because this is kind of what I would envision a burnt sienna looking like, to be honest with you. But I guess everybody has their own ideas about what something should or shouldn't look like. Let's see, the next one is their burnt sienna for the half pans, and I want to see how it compares to the burnt sienna in the Grand Godets. Okay, so this, to me, even though it says PBR7, I'm kind of questioning that, because to me this looks like PR 101. It looks like an English red, like a very deep brick red. Not at all what I would expect from a burnt sienna. Looking at the burnt sienna and the way it's dried up here, though, that is a quite beautiful color. It looked really red when I first put it down, but it's kind of gone towards more orangey. Now I know it has yellow like floating over it, but it does look quite beautiful when I see it drying. Okay, the next is Lamp Black, which is the last half pan in this 12 half pan set. Now, it was a little bit confusing because on the pan itself, on the label, it said PBK 7, but in the brochure, it said PBK 11. So I'm not sure if they're in the middle of changing their formulation, but yeah, that's just something to be aware of. I'm not really sure which pigment it is, but it does look like a fairly cool to neutral toned black. There's no hint of brown or anything like that. It's not green toned, it's not yellow toned. It's very neutral, I would say, leaning towards cool. Now that's it for the 12 half pan set, but I did get another half pan as part of my gift bag at the festival. So we're going to do that, and that is right here. This one is ultramarine green. It's a mix of PB 15-3 and PG7. And probably because of the phthalos here, you can see this one traveling quite a bit. I think this is a really beautiful color. I was really happy that I received this as part of my gift bag, even though I was not happy with the gift bag in general. And I have a video, it's either up or it's coming out soon, about my experience at the International Watercolor Masters. And within that, I'm going to talk about the gift bag because it became kind of an issue for me. Anyways, let's move on to the tubes, and I will squeeze them out and I will be back in a second to swatch them. So just wanted to quickly show you that these do squeeze out fairly cleanly. There's no binder separation that I could see. All of the pigment came out. Now, I used this yesterday when I was doing my original swatching, so I've squeezed out a little bit of new paint over top, but all of the paint tubes, none of them had any issues. It all squeezed out pretty easily. So let's start with the transparent gold ochre. Just adding some more water here. This is a mix of PY150 and PR101. So this is actually a mix that a lot of brands are now using for either quinacridone gold or quinacridone gold deep. So I think I probably have a couple of different brands that are using this. One that comes to mind is Michael Harding. I'm pretty sure uses this pigment combination. I'll have to double check, but yeah, this is nice. And then the transparent gold ochre, it goes down to like a very warm, transparent yellow gold color. Next, we have red ochre, which is PR101. So watercolor traditionalists will see this as a light red and kind of a staple of mixing. Just gonna see if I can tilt these colors towards each other. Probably had to add more water in my transparent gold ochre. That's okay. Next, we have cobalt turquoise, and it's interesting because even though this is a PG50, it is a very blue-looking PG50. So it's not like, you know, I expect that and that from PG50, but I don't think I was expecting this, which is more like a cerulean blue. I don't think I've ever seen a PG50 that had this color before. So I'm curious how they got it like this, but I guess that's a secret. Just a different way of formulating things. Yeah, so this is more of a cerulean blue. And I think that this combination of red, yellow, and blue are actually quite beautiful and could create some really lovely mixes together. The next one I have is Prussian Green, and this is PB60 and PG7. So it's a mix of Indanthrone Blue and Phthalo Green. It's beautiful. Let's see if I can get some connection going on. The final color that I selected in tube form is Chromium Green Oxide. I'm really a fan of Chromium Green Oxide. I think it's really an interesting shade, and I love to try it out in almost every brand that I have just to see what it's like, because everybody formulates it a little bit differently. My current favorite formulations are from Sennelier and Core. They both have a really deep and more granulating version of this color. And then I also have Chromium Green Oxide Dark from Roman Schmal, and that is so pretty. Like, it's just, oh, to die for. Okay, so this is all of the colors that I have from Renaissance. I think this color selection is really interesting and beautiful. They look so vibrant. I'm curious to see how they're going to dry out. So I'm going to let these dry, and then we'll come back and review the swatches after. So while we're waiting for our swatches to dry, I thought I would give you some more information about this giveaway. So when I was at the International Watercolor Masters and I was speaking with the representatives, I bought a bunch of colors on my own, and then they gave me this one. And then I went back the next day to swap a few colors out, and they gave me another one. So I ended up with 2 of these special edition colors, and they only made a very limited amount of them. Now, this doesn't have any pigment information. It just says special edition and pigments mix. So there's no information about what pigments are inside. I'd be really curious to know what you think is in here, because this is how it paints out. So it is a gorgeous color separating sort of indigo, purple, I don't know, maybe some shades of pink. It almost looks like an oil sheen when you see it painted out like this. It's absolutely stunning. If you'd like to be considered for this giveaway, can you please let me know in the comments what mix of pigments you think is in this special edition that would give this color separating tone. And if you leave that comment and you're also subscribed to my channel, I will put your name in for a draw, and I would be happy to send this anywhere that I'm able to with Royal Post from the UK. It also really helps my channel a lot if you hype a video, especially if it's within a couple of days of getting posted. Really goes a long way to let YouTube know that people like seeing these types of videos and that they appreciate my channel. So thank you very much. And one of you will be the lucky winner of this beautiful handmade special edition pigment. While I'm waiting for the swatches to dry, I thought I would just do a little bit of play and just see how some of these colors sort of run into each other. I like to do this with my watercolors just to see how they mix and merge and see some sort of like interesting mixes that they can create together. So I often do this just really quickly just to see what I can create from my beautiful colors. Okay, all of the swatches are dry, and I couldn't be more excited about some of these because they have dried out so beautifully, and I just love the way that they have melted into each other. So let's just do a quick pan over top of these. All of the ones labeled with GG are the Grand Godets. And I think these are extremely characterful paints. They have a lot of granulation, they have a lot of flow, they're a lot of fun to paint with, and there's some really interesting pigment mixes within this collection that are unfortunately not available in the tubes or the half pans. So what they told me was that all of the paints are formulated separately. So the Grand Godets, the half pans, and the tubes, they all have a different formulation, and that is why you see differences in the pigments that are available across those lines. So for example, you can see the burnt sienna in the half pan here is a lot different from the burnt sienna in the Grand Godet. So I'm not too sure why that is. It is a little bit maybe annoying for some people who get to like a color and then want to refill it. Something that I'm interested in is like if I have a really well-loved pigment, for example, Verdaccio, and I want to put that in a travel palette, I don't have the option to do it. So that's a downside of the Grand Godets. I would really love if Renaissance took a look at formulating some of their Grand Godet colors into tubes, because I think those would be really, really would really help sort of like encourage people to try them more if they had a little bit more flexibility in how they could use them. At least it would for me, because there's some colors here like this Tokyo Gray. Look at the Caput Mortem. These ones here, they're so gorgeous. All of the granulation that you're seeing there, like, yeah, I just love the way that all of these paints just flow. And I would love to have those available as tubes. Now, that being said, the tube colors that I selected, which are from this point forward, these 5 down here, those are all really beautiful colors as well. I didn't have the opportunity or the budget to buy like the entire line and try it all out, but I'm really curious to do a comparison between the tube colors and the Grand Godet colors. The pan colors, I feel like a lot of people have already tested those out. So I'm not sure if I would be like really interested in pursuing those further, but the tube colors for sure, I would want to do a comparison between this and the Grand Godets and see like where are their similarities, where are their differences, if you could do like a 1-to-1 comparison. But I think I'm going to have to get a lot richer before I can afford to do that. So for now, we just have this swatch page. I have really enjoyed this swatching session, and I'm so looking forward to using these paints. I just need to find a tray that's big enough to hold all of these extra large paint pans. So if you have suggestions for how to sort of affix these to something, I mean, I know I could use sticky tack, or I could put magnets on the bottom of these, but maybe there's like a pre-made tray that you found that works really well for these large pans. I'm just going to pull out a Kuretake pan and see if it's the same size. Okay, so this is a set of Kuretake paints that I have, and I guess like really all you need is a box, because that's how I use these ones, right? Let's just see if these pans are the same. So this is Kuretake. This is a Grand Godet. So it looks like they're exactly the same size. One thing I would say is like these Kuretake paints, they only come like half filled when you get them. That's the same with everything. And I haven't used these too much, but they only come half filled, which is a little bit annoying. Whereas the ones from Renaissance, completely different formulation. They're 2 different types of paints. I think Gansai Tambi are a little more plasticky and a little bit more rubbery and sticky when you use them. These ones are more like just watercolor, but in large pans. So they are exactly the same size of pan though. So if you have something that holds your Kuretake Gansai Tambi and it holds them really well, let me know in the comments if you have a suggestion for how I could put these into a pan. Thank you for joining me on this first look and swatching of these beautiful paints today. I can already think of quite a few different brands and pigments that I would like to compare them to, but I'm curious to know what you think. Is there a specific pigment you would like me to compare side by side? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.